learners. Today we are going to discuss about depository receipts. We are going to study in this session about depository receipts. There are two forms which are most popular: American depository receipts and global depository receipts. We are going to study about the features and the issuance procedure, how and why they are beneficial to the investors and to the companies who issue these ADRs and GDRs. Depository receipts thus allow investors to have an opportunity to hold shares of other countries' companies. The most common and most popular are the ADRs and the GDRs. ADRs began in the year 1920s, and it has been a good source of offering opportunities for companies, investors and traders. Since then, the DRs or the depository receipts as a concept spread across the globe in the form of GDRs or Global Depository Receipts, European Depository Receipts, and other international depository. The ADRs are traded on the US National Stock Exchange, such as the New York Stock Exchange or the American Stock Exchange, whereas the GDRs are mostly listed on the European stock exchanges, such as the London Stock Exchange. Both ADRs and GDRs are, however, denominated in US dollars, but can also be denominated in euros. The American Depository Receipt is a certificate that represents shares of a foreign company which are listed in the US stock exchanges and owned and issued by a US bank. The foreign shares of foreign companies are usually held in custody overseas, but the certificates traded in the US. Through this system, a large number of foreign-based companies are actively trading their shares on one of the three major US equity markets. Investors can purchase this ADR directly from brokers and dealers. The ADRs as such were introduced in the American market in the year 1927. ADRs are freely negotiable instruments denominated in dollars and issued by US depository banks. A non-US company who wishes to list their shares in the US stock exchanges must deposit its shares with a bank, which is known as a depository bank, and then receives a receipt which enables the company to issue ADRs. The ADRs are stock certificates which represents ownership of deposited shares. Some of the popular Indian ADRs listed on US stock markets are Infosys Technologies ADR, WIT or the Wipro ADR. ADR offers access to both institutional and retail market of investors in the US, and each ADR will represent a certain number of companies' share, which is the underlying asset for each ADR. The holder of the ADR can transfer the instrument as it is a freely negotiable instrument. It is an instrument that entitles the holder to get dividends as and when declared. However, the Securities Exchange Commission of the US has very stringent regulations to protect the investors. It has clearly mentioned that the prospectus should not contain any misstatement or omissions which may hide material facts, so that the investors can make the right decision based on rational basis. The GDRs are equity instruments which are also issued abroad by authorized overseas corporate bodies against bonds and shares of Indian companies who seek to get their shares listed on non-US stock exchanges. An Indian company intending to issue GDR will first issue the corresponding number of shares to an overseas depository bank, and these GDRs will represent a certain number of underlying equity shares of the Indian company. The GDR is quoted and traded in dollar terms. It is the depository bank which subsequently issues the GDR to the subscribing public. They are freely negotiable and transferable outside India. However, the dividend for the share is paid out in Indian rupees. They are traded mostly over the counter. Most of the Indian companies going in for GDR issues have got them listed on the Luxembourg Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange. However, from legal point of view, there is no difference between the ADR and the GDR. The GDR provides another opportunity besides the ADR to Indian companies to raise funds through equity shares issued abroad to increase and get funds for their domestic operations. As per the recent guidelines on the issue of GDRs, a corporate body or entity can issue any number of GDRs in a year. The ADRs and the GDR provide benefits to the companies in India. They help to improve the corporate image both of the company in India and abroad as the shares of the companies get listed on stock exchanges abroad, US or other European countries. It provides an exposure to these Indian companies in international markets and help them to compete with the other companies who have their shares listed on these markets. It provides them an additional means to raise capital from abroad in foreign exchange to help them import capital equipment from these countries easily. The Indian companies obtaining the proceeds of these ADRs and GDRs in the form of foreign currencies can use them for activities like overseas acquisition, mergers, acquisitions, and setting up offices abroad. And us join in for the next session.